ABC General Hospital spoilers reveal that the arrest of Jason does not simply send shockwaves through Port Charles. It fractures something deeper, something more personal, especially for Carly, whose world has always been built on a fragile balance between loyalty and survival. In General Hospital, moments like this are never isolated events. They are pressure points that expose the emotional architecture of every character involved. And for Carly, Jason's arrest is not just a legal crisis, it is an existential one. The man who has always been her anchor, her silent protector in a world driven by betrayal and shifting alliances, is suddenly out of reach, pulled into a system that she neither trusts nor respects. That loss of control ignites something dangerous within her, something that has been restrained for too long. Carly's inability to accept Jason's situation is not rooted in denial, but in instinct. She knows that Jason is not simply caught in a misunderstanding. He has been placed exactly where someone wants him to be. The realization sharpens her thinking rather than clouding it. Every detail surrounding his arrest begins to feel orchestrated, as though an invisible hand has guided events toward this precise outcome. The deeper she looks, the more it becomes clear that this is not about justice, it is about leverage. And Jason, for all his strength, has become a piece in a much larger game. That game leads directly to Brennan, whose role in this unfolding crisis becomes increasingly impossible to ignore. Brennan is not just a figure of authority or a man holding information. He is a gatekeeper to a truth that has the potential to reshape everything Carly believes about Jason's future. The interrogation that follows is not a simple exchange of questions and answers. It is a psychological duel, where every word carries weight and every silence speaks louder than any confession. Carly does not approach Brennan as someone seeking clarity. She approaches him as someone who already senses the danger and is trying to define its boundaries before it consumes her. What Brennan reveals is not immediate, not explosive in the traditional sense, but far more unsettling. It is the suggestion of a future that has already begun to take shape, a future where Jason's fate is tied to forces beyond his control. The idea that Jason has been marked whether as a target, an asset, or something in between introduces a level of inevitability that Carly cannot accept. Brennan does not need to spell out every detail. The implication alone is enough. Jason is no longer just a man in custody. He is part of a strategy, one that extends far beyond Port Charles and into the shadowy reach of the WSB. That revelation changes everything. Carly's desperation evolves into determination, and that determination quickly edges toward something far more aggressive. The possibility that Jason's future is being dictated by an organization like the WSB is not something she can negotiate with or reason through. It is something she must disrupt. The idea of waiting, of trusting the process, becomes unbearable. Carly does not operate within systems. She breaks them when they threaten the people she loves. And now, with Jason at the center of a dangerous and unknown plan, she begins to consider actions that would once have seemed unthinkable. Her path inevitably intersects with Valentine, whose own relationship with the WSB and its hidden agendas makes him both an ally and a risk. Valentine understands the language of power that organizations like the WSB use. He recognizes the patterns, the strategies, the quiet manipulations that shape outcomes long before they are visible to anyone else. Where Carly is driven by emotion and urgency, Valentine operates with calculation, weighing every move against its potential consequences. Their alliance is not built on trust, but on necessity, a shared understanding that Jason's situation cannot be resolved through conventional means. Together, they begin to navigate a landscape defined by secrets and shifting loyalties. Every step forward reveals another layer of complexity, another indication that Brennan's involvement is not as straightforward as it initially appeared. He is not simply delivering information, he is controlling its flow, revealing just enough to guide actions without ever relinquishing full control. This makes him both invaluable and dangerous. Carly senses it immediately. Brennan is not someone who can be relied upon, he is someone who must be outmaneuvered. The tension between these forces builds steadily, creating a sense that everything is moving toward a confrontation that cannot be avoided. Carly's willingness to act, to push beyond boundaries, contrasts sharply with Valentine's caution, yet it is precisely that contrast that drives their progress. Carly forces movement where there would otherwise be hesitation, while Valentine ensures that movement does not lead directly into a trap. It is a precarious balance, one that could collapse at any moment, especially as the influence of the WSB becomes more pronounced. What makes this situation even more volatile is the growing awareness that Brennan himself may not be fully aligned with the organization he represents. His actions, his carefully measured disclosures, suggest a level of autonomy that raises questions about his true motives. Is he guiding Carly and Valentine toward the truth, or is he steering them toward a conclusion that serves a larger, unseen objective? The uncertainty surrounding him adds another layer of tension to an already unstable situation. As the story unfolds, the focus shifts from Jason's arrest to what that arrest represents. It is no longer just about freeing him, it is about understanding why he was targeted in the first place. The answer to that question holds the key to everything else. If Jason has been chosen for a reason, then removing him from custody is only the first step. The real challenge lies in dismantling the system that put him there. Carly's internal conflict intensifies as she moves closer to that realization. Her instinct is to act quickly, to break through obstacles with force if necessary. But the deeper she becomes involved, the more she understands that this is not a battle that can be won through sheer will alone. It requires strategy, patience, and a willingness to confront truths that may be even more painful than Jason's arrest itself. The idea that she may not be able to protect him in the way she always has begins to take hold, and that realization threatens to break something within her. Yet it is also what drives her forward. Carly does not retreat in the face of uncertainty, she adapts. The possibility of failure does not stop her, it refines her focus. With Valentine beside her and Brennan's shadow looming over every decision, she moves deeper into a conflict that is larger than any single relationship, larger than any single betrayal. It is a conflict defined by power, by control, and by the lengths people are willing to go to protect what matters most. And at the center of it all remains Jason, caught between forces that seek to use him, control him, or eliminate him entirely. His silence, his absence, becomes its own form of presence, shaping the decisions of those who refuse to abandon him. Carly's fight is no longer just about saving Jason. It is about reclaiming the sense of certainty that his presence once provided. Without him, the world feels unstable, unpredictable, and dangerously exposed. As the lines between ally and enemy continue to blur, one thing becomes increasingly clear. This is not a story that will resolve cleanly. The involvement of the WSB ensures that every victory will come at a cost. Every revelation will lead to further questions, and every decision will carry consequences that extend far beyond the immediate moment. Brennan's role, Valentine's calculations, Carly's determination, all of it converges into a single escalating tension that refuses to release its grip. In the end, the true battle is not just about freeing Jason or uncovering the truth. It is about confronting a system that thrives on secrecy and control, a system that has already proven its ability to manipulate even the strongest individuals. Carly's journey through this crisis becomes a test of her resilience, her instincts, and her willingness to face a future that may not align with the one she has always fought to preserve. And as that future begins to take shape, one question remains at the heart of it all. How far is she willing to go to bring Jason back, and what will be left of her when she does? The possibility of Jason's early return to Port Charles does not arrive as a moment of relief, but as a spark that threatens to ignite something far more volatile beneath the surface of General Hospital. What should feel like hope instead carries the weight of escalation, because the forces that pulled Jason away have not disappeared. They have only shifted, repositioned, and tightened their grip. And at the center of that shift stands Carly, no longer reacting to events as they unfold, but beginning to shape them with a resolve that borders on something far more dangerous. Carly's determination to bring Jason back is not new, but the intensity behind it has changed. It is no longer fueled solely by loyalty or desperation. It is driven by the growing certainty that everything surrounding Jason's arrest was engineered. That certainty transforms her mindset. She no longer seeks answers in the traditional sense. She seeks accountability, and more than that, she seeks consequences. The names Cullum, Sidwell, and Brennan are no longer distant figures tied to a larger conspiracy. They become targets in her mind, symbols of a system that dared to take something from her and expects her to accept it. The idea that Jason could return sooner than expected becomes the catalyst for a dangerous shift in Carly's behavior. Instead of waiting for that moment, she begins to act as though his return must be secured at any cost. Every decision she makes carries a sharper edge, a willingness to cross lines that she once approached with caution. What makes this transformation so compelling is that it does not happen suddenly, it unfolds gradually, with each revelation pushing her further from restraint and closer to a version of herself that is defined not by survival, but by retaliation. Cullum becomes the first focal point of that anger. His involvement, whether direct or indirect, places him at the center of the chain of events that led to Jason's downfall. To Carly, he is not just a participant, he is a failure of the system, a reminder that justice has been twisted into something unrecognizable. The thought of eliminating him is not framed as an act of violence in her mind, but as a correction, a way of restoring balance in a world that has lost it. That rationalization is what makes her path so dangerous. She is not acting out of chaos, she is acting with purpose. Sidwell represents something even more complex. He is not simply an adversary, he is an architect, someone who operates on a level that Carly both recognizes and despises. His influence extends beyond individual actions, shaping outcomes in ways that are difficult to trace and even harder to confront. For Carly, confronting Sidwell is not just about revenge, it is about dismantling the mechanism that allowed someone like him to operate unchecked. Yet that ambition carries its own risks, because taking down someone like Sidwell requires stepping into his world, adopting his methods, and accepting the moral cost that comes with it. And then there is Brennan, whose role in this unfolding crisis remains the most ambiguous and therefore the most dangerous. Brennan does not fit neatly into Carly's framework of enemies. He is neither fully aligned with the system nor entirely separate from it. His knowledge, his restraint, and the way he reveals information suggest a level of control that Carly cannot fully understand. That uncertainty makes him unpredictable, and unpredictability is something Carly cannot tolerate when Jason's fate is at stake. The more she learns about Brennan, the more she begins to see him not as a source of answers, but as a potential obstacle, one that may need to be removed if it stands in her way. What emerges from this convergence of motivations is not a simple rescue mission, but a calculated escalation towards something far more destructive. Carly's willingness to consider eliminating multiple figures tied to Jason's situation marks a turning point in her character. It is not just about saving someone she loves, it is about redefining the rules of engagement. She is no longer operating within the boundaries set by Port Charles or its institutions. She is creating her own, guided by a singular objective that leaves little room for compromise. Yet beneath that determination lies a deeper conflict, one that threatens to undermine everything she is trying to achieve. Carly understands, even if she does not fully acknowledge it, that every step she takes in this direction brings her closer to a point of no return. The line between justice and vengeance becomes increasingly blurred, and the more she crosses that line, the harder it becomes to distinguish her actions from those she seeks to punish. This internal tension adds a layer of complexity to her journey, turning what could have been a straightforward narrative of rescue into something far more psychologically charged. Jason's potential return only intensifies that conflict. If he comes back to Port Charles to find Carly transformed by the very forces she sought to fight against, the reunion will not be the resolution she imagines. It will be a confrontation with the consequences of her choices, a moment where the cost of her actions becomes impossible to ignore. The question is no longer whether she can bring him back, but whether she can do so without losing herself in the process. As the situation continues to evolve, the atmosphere in Port Charles becomes increasingly unstable. Alliances shift, loyalties are tested, and the sense of impending confrontation grows stronger with each passing moment. The idea that Carly could move against Cullum, Sidwell, and Brennan is not dismissed as impossible, it is feared as inevitable. Each of these figures represents a different aspect of the system she is challenging, and taking them on simultaneously is not just ambitious, it is reckless. But recklessness has always been part of Carly's strength. It is what allows her to act when others hesitate, to push forward when others retreat. The difference now is the scale of what she is attempting. This is no longer about navigating the politics of Port Charles or outmaneuvering a single adversary. It is about confronting a network of power that extends beyond anything she has faced before. And in doing so, she risks becoming something she never intended to be. The story that unfolds from this point is not just about action, but about consequence. Every move Carly makes reverberates outward, affecting not only her own future, but the futures of everyone connected to her. Jason's return, if it comes, will not erase what has happened. It will only bring those consequences into sharper focus, forcing both of them to confront the reality of what it took to bring him home. In the end, the most compelling aspect of this narrative is not the question of whether Carly will succeed, but what success will look like when she gets there. If eliminating Cullum, Sidwell, and Brennan becomes the path she chooses, then victory itself becomes complicated, shaped by loss as much as by triumph. And as Port Charles stands on the edge of that outcome, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. Sometimes the greatest danger is not the enemy you face, but the version of yourself you become in order to defeat them.